Vancouver General is now handing out warning letters to its new patients about...
Ontario is facing a potentially disastrous doctor
Many of the 5 million Canadians who don't have a family doctor have been looking.
A report released today says Canadians are waiting far too long
despite
for
a
healthcare.
growing shortage of physicians.
Shortage of family doctors.
Doctors say the system's broken. Patient overload is so bad, the hospital is considering closing its emergency room.
In 1998, I left my homeland and I became one of those hundreds of thousands of people who leave their country each year with the hope of making a new home in Canada. This plane is probably carrying new immigrants, excited and nervous. Some may be well educated, some may even be medical doctors. I remember this sign, full of hope and promise. But my new life was not as easy as I thought it would be. I went from being an established journalist in Kurdistan to working at a convenience store. But now, years later, I am back doing what I love, supporting the voices that wouldn't otherwise be heard. Now, I want to tell the story of international medical doctors, or IMDs, for their struggle is great and untold.
My name is Parvez Ahmed. I came from Pakistan and I was a family physician there. In Canada, I'm working as a security guard. I patrol every floor of the building and around the building, and usually I do this every hours, and then I sit down in front of the monitor. There are a lot of cameras in the building and I keep watching them, so when I see anything wrong, I go there right away. Tonight it's from 4 p.m. till 8 a.m. morning.
You work 15 hours. Do you feel lonely? Do you miss your kids?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I feel lonely. I have no option.
So this is the only way you can support your family?
Yeah, right now it's the only way.
Pervez invited me back to his home where I met his wife, Rana, who is also a doctor, and their 2 daughters. How do you feel you can't work as a doctor here?
Naturally, I'm not feeling good. We tried to get into the system, but I didn't get actually any hope to get the residency. I think it's not a big deal to get through the exam, but to get the residency is really very, very tough here. Because it's a long queue and you have to wait years and years.
Immigrant medical doctors must repeat 2 years of residency in Canada, working under supervision in the medical system. I was shocked to discover that in my home province of British Columbia, there are only 18 of these residencies available each year to foreign-trained medical doctors, and the competition is fierce. With over 600 international doctors in BC alone competing for these spots, the odds of obtaining one of them are next to impossible. My next stop was Patrick Cody, the coordinator of British Columbia's internationally trained professionals. Patrick is an advocate of the International Medical Doctors, or IMDs. I wanted to know why our healthcare system is in such a bad state and how IMDs could help.
This is what we produced for MLAs in BC.
Right.
About 15 or 20 years ago, there was a consultant that was hired to do an analysis of how many doctors were needed. And I don't know how this person or this group ever came up with the idea that we had an oversupply, but this was a national paper that was released that indicated that we had an oversupply and that we didn't need to train as many doctors. and we didn't need to integrate as many internationally trained medical doctors in the future. This was exactly incorrect and wrong because, of course, the baby boomers are now retiring, and we're finding ourselves in a crunch in every profession in the health field. We've got a very large number of family physicians that are no longer accepting patients. There are some doctors in the rural area that are just about to retire. There's no one to take over their practice. You've got huge numbers of Canadians that don't even have access to a doctor. It's unfortunate because we did have one of the best healthcare systems in the world. We're now well behind a lot of European countries, and as a result, the public is suffering. The doctor shortage in Canada is critical. If you were to talk to the general public, they'll tell you. You talk to people and they have friends and family that have been dramatically adversely affected or that have died waiting for access.
After meeting Kim, I went to the College of Physicians and Surgeons of BC to meet with Dr. Elliot Phillips to find out about the college's criteria for licensing international medical doctors.
The mandate of the college is to protect the public, to assure the public that the care that they receive is competent. When people call the college or international graduates claim that we are trying to keep them out, it comes back to the standard of care that you as a Canadian expect. And the first person to say to the college when they are injured by a physician who would be perhaps an international graduate is, why did you license this person?
I'll work almost any place in the world.
Dr. Clement Williams has been mentoring IMDs for years. He has a completely different view.
They're all the foreign graduates we've trained starting 7 or 8 years ago. I've trained all of these foreign graduates that you see in these plaques. They're all bright kids. They didn't get through medical school without being relatively intelligent, and they're quite motivated. They realize that it's now or never. This is their last chance to get into the system, so they try really hard.
Canadian medical authorities have only assessed a few select countries. Any IMDs immigrating from the rest of the world face a grueling uphill battle. I have discovered that we have a critical doctor shortage, long waiting lists, not enough residencies, and there are between 5,000 to 8,000 international medical doctors in Canada. Is there a solution to this bottleneck?
There's a fatal flaw in the healthcare system in this country, and that is that provincial ministries of health aren't interested in spending more money, they're interested in spending less, obviously. So it's not in their interest to issue more licenses if they can possibly help it. Most of the self-regulating colleges, the ones that issue licenses, are regulated by the doctors. There's a set amount of money for healthcare. So if there are more doctors working, that's less money per doctor. The colleges and the ministries of health in every province aren't really interested in having more doctors or spending more money in healthcare.
I would say that the greatest misunderstanding on the part of many members of the public is that the government has tight purse strings and is not interested in releasing any money for the education of international graduates. And I think that all of those beliefs are true misconceptions.
Well, you hear sometimes in the media, oh, well, you just can't throw money at it. Well, that's true. You can't just throw money at something. That money has to be spent effectively, and there has to be oversight of that. But it is a money problem.
If IMDs are a solution, then why don't we make more residencies available to them?
It's easy to say, jeepers, we have 300 international graduates. Why aren't you doing 100 this year? You can't do 100. You can't do 50. They barely can do 16.
Why not? Why not 50?
Because you have to have clinicians to teach. The clinicians are having difficulty enough teaching the residents in postgraduate training. If you then add to that and add to that, they have to provide care. If you take a student with you, literally, in your office, you will be slowed down in your day by probably 30%.
Dr. Phillips makes the case that there are not enough clinicians to train more IMDs. However, the Canadian medical system spends thousands of hours training wealthy visa doctors who won't even end up staying in the country. Tell me about visa doctors.
Visa doctors are a term that reference those internationally trained medical doctors that come here to train. They buy residencies at hospitals across the country, and those hospitals charge a much higher rate. Generally speaking, they come from wealthy nations. Examples are Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia. And then they are required by the contract they sign to go back to their home country. And I know that in BC, we're well over 100 visa doctors per year. So they get our training, and then they go back home.
What would I encourage them to do? I would likely encourage them to obtain postgraduate training in a system which is familiar or has been assessed by the national authorities in Canada, which is familiar to us, and then consider immigration.
Realistically, if you're an internationally trained medical doctor and you're in any province in the country, your chances of getting in are less than 5%. So that means that 95% never work as medical doctors here. So they either got to find work in an alternative field or they leave.